Freya had learned to live with the whispers. 5 years of them following her through the market, coming after her at gatherings, ruining every talk with the wolves of Shadowfen Pack. Cursed, bad omen, Deathbringer, the widow who'd killed her mate. They never said it to her face anymore, but she heard it in the silence when she came near, saw it in the way mothers pulled their children away from Torin, felt it in every cold shoulder and turned back. Her mate Bram had died saving her life and their baby son from rogues, but somehow she'd become the bad guy of the story. Where are you watching from? I hope wherever you are, you've never felt this kind of loneliness. The morning market was the worst. Freya needed to buy supplies, needed food for Torin, but every trip required armor she didn't have. She walked through the stalls with her 5-year-old son's hand tight in hers, his small fingers trusting in a way that broke her heart. He didn't understand yet why the other children wouldn't play with him, why the shop owners served them last, if at all, why their little cottage sat on the edge of pack territory, as far from the center as possible without being kicked out completely. "Mama, why is everyone staring?" Torin whispered, his voice carrying that special tone of a child who knew something was wrong, but couldn't name it. "They're not, sweetheart," Freya lied, pulling him closer. "Come on, let's get the bread and go home." But as she came up to Marcus's bakery stall, the big beta turned his back on purpose. "Sorry, no bread left today." Freya could see at least a dozen loaves behind him. "Marcus, please. I have money. I said I'm out." He didn't even look at her. "Try somewhere else. Somewhere else would be the same. It always was." Freya swallowed the embarrassment and moved on, feeling Torin's confusion coming up through their joined hands. He was too young to understand, but not too young to sense her pain. That was the hard part of being a mother. Your children soaked up your suffering no matter how hard you tried to hide it. She was thinking about leaving the market empty-handed when a commotion rippled through the crowd, voices rising in surprise and excitement, wolves straightening up, fixing their clothes, suddenly urgent and alert. "It's Alpha King Alaric, the king himself here in Shadowfen. Quick, someone get Alpha Rorik." Freya's first thought was to run away. She didn't need her pack leader seeing her here, being reminded she existed. Alpha Rorik had made his opinion of her very clear over the years. She was allowed to stay only because kicking out a widow with a small child would look mean to nearby packs. But he'd never hidden his belief that she'd somehow caused Bram's death, that just being near her brought bad luck. But before Freya could slip away, the crowd split apart, and she saw them. 25 wolves in human form, all warriors, all moving with the same smooth movements of top guards. They wore the colors of the Northern Kingdom, silver and white, the same pale shades that marked winter itself. And at their center walked a man who could only be the Alpha King. Alpha Alaric was tall, easily 6.5 feet, with silver-white hair that fell past his shoulders and ice-blue eyes that swept the market with the studying look of a born leader. He wore travel clothes rather than fancy outfits, but power came from him like heat from a flame. Scars marked his visible skin, hands, neck, a thin line along his jaw, proof of battles survived and won. He was also, Freya realized with a shock, one of the most striking men she'd ever seen. Not handsome in a soft way, but beautiful in the way winter mountains were beautiful. Harsh and commanding and impossible to look away from. And he was walking straight toward her. No, not toward her. He couldn't be. Freya pulled Torin closer, ready to move out of the way, ready to make herself invisible, as she'd learned to do. But the Alpha King's eyes locked onto hers and her breath caught because she felt it. That impossible, undeniable pull, the mate bond snapping into place like a key turning in a lock she'd thought would never open again. No, this wasn't possible. She'd already had her mate. Bram had been her true mate, chosen by the moon goddess, connected to her soul. When he died, that bond had broken, leaving a wound that still hurt 5 years later. You didn't get a second mate. The moon goddess didn't give second chances. But Alaric had stopped walking. His eyes were locked on hers, wide with the same shock she felt. His beta, a striking woman with silver-streaked hair, leaned in to say something. But he waved her off without looking away from Freya. Then he moved. 3 long steps brought him close enough that Freya could see the exact moment recognition hit him. The way his breath caught, the way his jaw tightened, the way his hands curled into fists at his sides, as if he was fighting the urge to reach for her. "You," he said, his voice rough. He didn't finish. Didn't need to. Freya felt it too. The bond humming between them, impossible and undeniable and absolutely terrifying. Mama. Torrhen's voice was small and confused. Who's that? Freya couldn't answer. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't think past the feeling of being seen. Truly seen for the first time in 5 years. Not as a curse or a burden or a bad omen, but as a person, as a woman, as a mate. I'm Alaric, the Alpha King said, and his voice was gentler now, directed at Torrhen. What's your name, young one? Torrhen, her son answered, with the easy trust of children who hadn't yet learned to fear strangers. I'm 5. Are you really the king? I am. Alaric crouched down to Torrhen's level, which brought him eye to eye with the boy. And you're very brave talking to a king. Your mama should be proud. Something in Freya's chest cracked at the kindness in his voice, at the way he spoke to her son with respect. Not the pity or meanness she'd grown used to. Tears threatened, but she blinked them back. She would not cry in the market, would not give Alaric and the others more reasons to talk. Your Majesty? Alaric's voice cut through the moment like a blade. The Shadowfen Pack's leader pushed through the crowd, his face carefully blank, but his eyes sharp. This is an unexpected honor. If you'd sent word of your visit, we would have prepared proper places for you to stay. I don't need fancy places, Alaric said, standing but not moving away from Freya. I'm here on a brief check of the border territories. Standard procedure. I'll only need a few hours of your time. Of course. Please come to my hall. We can discuss territory matters privately. Rorik's eyes flickered to Freya, and something ugly passed through his eyes. I see you've met one of our residents. The pause before residence was on purpose, a reminder that Freya barely counted as pack anymore, that she was allowed to stay, not valued. Alaric's jaw tightened. I've met my mate. The market went dead silent. Freya's heart stopped. Torrhen looked up at her with wide eyes, and Rorik's face went through several looks in quick order. Shock, disbelief, and finally calculation. Your mate? Rorik's voice was carefully controlled. Your Majesty, surely you're mistaken. This is Freya. She's just a beta, a widow, and there are concerns about her. Her first mate died under strange... Are you saying the moon goddess made a mistake? Alaric's voice could have frozen fire. Because that's what it sounds like you're suggesting. No, of course not. I would never... Rorik stammered, his face turning pale. I only meant that Freya has had some difficulties. Her mate's death was tragic, and there have been rumors. I don't care about rumors. Alaric turned his full attention back to Freya, and she felt pinned by his ice-blue stare. What's your name? Freya. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. And this is my son, Torrhen. His father was my mate, Bram. He died 5 years ago. She saw understanding appear in Alaric's eyes. He'd lost someone too. She could see it in the way his face changed, the way his posture shifted. Grief, recognized grief. I'm sorry for your loss, he said quietly. I know what it's like to lose a mate. My wife Leora died 3 years ago. The market was so silent now that Freya could hear her own heartbeat. Everyone was watching. Everyone was listening. Everyone was waiting to see what would happen to the cursed widow who'd somehow caught the attention of the Alpha King himself. I don't understand, Freya whispered. The moon goddess doesn't give second mates. Once your true mate dies, that's it. Everyone knows that. Everyone is wrong. The voice came from behind Alaric. His beta, the silver-haired woman who'd been watching the entire exchange with sharp eyes. The moon goddess can give second chance mates to those who've lost their first. It's rare. Incredibly rare. But it happens usually only to those who've shown special strength or who have a greater purpose yet to complete. That's impossible, Rorik protested. I've never heard of such a thing. With respect, Rorik, you've led a small mountain pack your entire life. The beta's tone was polite but pointed. The Alpha King has access to knowledge and records you've never seen. I'm Winter, by the way. This last was directed at Freya, the king's second in command. And I can promise you, second chance mates exist. They're blessed by the moon goddess when she sees fit to give broken hearts another try at happiness. Freya's mind was spinning. A second chance mate. It seemed too good to be true, too impossible to hope for. She'd spent 5 years convinced she'd spend the rest of her life alone, raising Torrhen without a partner, carrying the weight of the pack's judgment by herself. And now the Alpha King himself stood before her, saying she was his mate. "I need time," Freya heard herself say. I have a son. I have responsibilities, and I don't even know you." "I understand." Alaric's voice was gentle, patient in a way that made her chest ache. "I'm not asking you to decide anything right now, but I would like to talk, to get to know you, to let you get to know me. Will you allow that?" Before Freya could answer, Torrin tugged on her hand. "Mama, I like him. He's nice." Out of the mouths of children. Freya looked down at her son, at his trusting face, and felt something shift in her chest. Torrin had been without a father for his entire memory that he could recall. He'd grown up watching other children with their parents, their complete families. And here was a king, powerful and important, treating him with kindness and respect. "All right," Freya said, "we can talk." The conversations that followed over the next 3 days changed Freya's life in ways she couldn't have imagined. Alaric didn't demand she come to him. Instead, he came to her, to the small cottage on the edge of Pact territory that she shared with Torrin. He arrived each evening after spending his days on official business with Alaric, and he never came with empty hands. The first night, he brought bread from a baker in the next territory over. The second night, toys for Torrin. The third night, flowers from the mountain meadows. They talked about everything and nothing, about their lost mates, about grief, about the strange miracle of finding a second chance when they thought their hearts were permanently closed. Alaric told her about Leora, who'd been gentle and kind and had died slowly from a wasting sickness that no healer could cure. Freya told him about Bram, who'd been brave and loving, and had thrown himself between her and a rogue's claws without hesitation. "He saved us," Freya said on the third night, with Torrin asleep in the next room and winter stars visible through the window. "The rogues came out of nowhere. We were just walking in the forest, me carrying Torrin in a sling. He was only 6 months old. Bram heard them first, told me to run. I did, but they were faster. He fought all 3 of them alone, killed 2. The third got him before dying from its wounds." Her voice cracked on the last words. Even 5 years later, the memory was painful. "The pack found us the next morning. Me holding Bram's body, Torrin crying in my arms, and somehow in the days that followed, it became my fault. People said I'd brought the rogues' attention, that I'd distracted Bram, that I'd brought death to our territory." She laughed bitterly. "They started calling me cursed, said anyone close to me would die. They wouldn't kick out a widow with a baby, but they made sure I knew I wasn't wanted." Alaric's hand covered hers where it rested on the table. His touch was warm, solid, real. "They were wrong and cruel, and you survived despite them. I had to, for Torrin." Freya looked toward the room where her son slept. "He's all I have." "Not anymore." Alaric's voice was quiet but certain. "If you'll have me, you'll have a mate who sees your strength, not a curse. A pack that will value you, not push you away. And a partner who understands what it's like to love and lose and find the courage to love again." Freya met his ice-blue eyes and saw nothing but honesty. No pity, no doubt, just acceptance and a growing affection that matched her own unexpected feelings. "I'm afraid," she admitted. "What if the moon goddess is wrong? What if something happens to you too? What if I really am cursed?" Alaric moved from his chair to kneel beside hers, taking both her hands in his. "Listen to me. You're not cursed. You're a survivor. You're a mother who's raised her son alone in mean conditions. You're a woman who's lived through 5 years of cruelty and judgment and still has kindness in her eyes. If the moon goddess chose you for me, it's because she knew I needed someone exactly that strong. You don't even know me," Freya whispered. But her protest was weakening. "Then let me know you. Come with me to my territory. Bring Torrin. Stay for a few weeks. See how you feel. If you decide you can't do this, I'll bring you back. No questions asked. But please, Freya, give us a chance. Give yourself a chance to be happy again." Freya thought about her cottage on the edge of Pact territory, about the whispers and the cold shoulders and the loneliness that had become her constant companion, about Torrin growing up believing he was somehow tainted by being connected to his cursed mother. Then she thought about the way Alaric looked at her, like she was someone precious, the way he treated Torrin with gentle respect, the way her heart, broken and carefully guarded, was already beginning to open despite her fears. "Okay," she said. "We'll come." The smile that broke across Alaric's face was like sunrise breaking through winter clouds. The journey to the northern kingdom took 4 days. Freya rode in a comfortable wagon with Torin, while Alaric and his 25 top guards traveled alongside on horses. It should have felt scary. 25 warriors, all loyal to the king, all watching her with different levels of curiosity. But Winter made a point of riding beside the wagon often, talking to Freya through the window, slowly becoming something like a friend. "The king hasn't smiled like this in 3 years," Winter said on the second day. "Not since Leora died." "You're good for him." "I haven't done anything," Freya protested. "You've given him hope." Winter's gray eyes were kind. "That's not nothing." On the 4th day, they came up over a hill, and Freya saw the northern kingdom spread out below them. It was huge, much larger than Shadowfen's mountain territory. A small city, really, with buildings of wood and stone arranged in organized streets, smoke rising from hundreds of chimneys, wolves going about their business in every direction. "It's beautiful," Freya breathed. Beside her, Torin pressed his face to the wagon window, eyes wide. "Mama, look how big it is. Are we really going to live here?" "We're visiting," Freya corrected automatically, but she couldn't deny the flutter of hope in her chest. Alaric rode up beside the wagon. "Welcome to Frostholm. Your new home, if you'll have it." The confidence in his voice made her smile despite her nervousness. They were greeted with curiosity rather than meanness. Wolves stopped to stare as Alaric's group passed through the streets, but their faces were interested, not cruel. Some even smiled and waved at Torin, who waved back enthusiastically. Alaric had prepared a group of rooms for them in the Great Hall, far more space than Freya had ever had, with a separate bedroom for Torin, a sitting area, and windows that overlooked a courtyard where children played. "I hope this is acceptable," Alaric said, watching her take it in. "If you need anything changed, it's perfect." Freya turned to him, feeling overwhelmed by his thoughtfulness. "Thank you for all of this, for not giving up on me, even when I was afraid." "I understand fear," Alaric said simply. "I was afraid too when I first felt the mate bond, afraid of betraying Leora's memory, afraid of losing someone again. But Winter reminded me that Leora would want me to be happy, that love isn't something that runs out, that opening your heart to someone new doesn't make less of what you had with someone else." Freya felt tears prick her eyes. "Bram would want me to be happy too. He told me once, years ago, that if anything ever happened to him, I should live fully. Not just survive, but truly live. I haven't done that in 5 years. Then maybe it's time to start." Over the next 2 weeks, Freya slowly let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, she deserved this second chance. She spent her days learning about Frostholm, meeting pack members who treated her with respect and warmth, watching Torin blossom with other children who actually wanted to play with him. And she spent her evenings with Alaric, learning who he was beyond the crown and the title. He was kind but firm, fair but unwilling to bend when it came to justice. He'd lost his mate, but hadn't let grief make him cruel. He'd continued leading his pack with wisdom and care even when his own heart was breaking. And he was good with Torin. So good that Freya sometimes had to blink back tears watching them together. Alaric taught her son to carve wood, to track animals, to identify stars. He never treated Torin as an obligation or an annoyance. He treated him like a child worthy of time and attention and care. "You're good with him," Freya said one evening after Torin had fallen asleep mid-story, his small body curled against Alaric's side. "He's a good kid." Alaric carefully pulled away and carried Torin to bed, tucking him in with practiced ease. When he returned, his face was softer than Freya had seen it. "Leora and I tried for children, but she got sick before it could happen. I'd always thought I'd missed my chance at being a father. Torin needs a father," Freya said quietly. "He doesn't remember Bram. I've told him stories, shown him the one portrait we had, but memories aren't the same as having someone there." Alaric moved to sit beside her on the couch. "Freya, I need you to know something. I'm not trying to replace Bram. What you had with him was sacred, was real, was your first love. But I hope in time you might find room in your heart for a second love, a different love, but no less real." Freya looked at this man who'd appeared in her life like an answer to a prayer she'd been too afraid to speak. "I think," she said slowly, "I already have." It happened on the 16th day. Freya had been in Frostholm for just over 2 weeks when her gift appeared. She'd always been a normal beta. No special abilities, no unusual talents. Just an ordinary woman trying to survive in a world that had turned mean. So when she touched Alaric's hand during a walk through the gardens, and suddenly felt a rush of images and emotions that weren't her own. She gasped and pulled back in shock. "What's wrong?" Alaric asked immediately, concerned. I saw something. Felt something. Your memories. Freya stared at her hands like they'd betrayed her. How is that possible? Winter, who'd been walking a respectful distance behind them, came forward quickly. Describe what you felt. Pain, grief. I saw a woman with dark hair, sick in bed. I felt how much you loved her, how helpless you felt watching her fade. Freya's voice cracked. I felt her last breath. Alaric's face had gone pale. Leora. You saw Leora. Memory keeper. Winter breathed. Moon goddess. She's a memory keeper. I've only read about them in the oldest texts. They're incredibly rare, and their gift usually appears after a big emotional event, like finding a second chance mate. What does it mean? Freya asked, still reeling from how intense what she'd experienced was. It means you can see and feel memories through touch, Winter explained. Both from people and from objects. It's considered one of the most sacred gifts because memories are the heart of who we are. But it can also be painful, especially if you run into traumatic memories. Freya looked at Alaric, seeing him with new understanding. She'd felt his love for Leora, his grief at her loss, his guilt over moving on, and she'd also felt something else, his growing love for Freya herself, careful, but real. I'm sorry, she said softly. I didn't mean to intrude on something so private. You didn't intrude. Alaric took her hands carefully, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. And now you know. You've seen the depths of my grief, and you know I loved Leora with everything I had. But you've also felt, I think, that my heart has room for you too. That loving you doesn't make less of what I felt for her. Freya nodded, understanding in a way words could never explain, because she'd felt it all. The love, the loss, the slow healing, the cautious opening to new possibilities. I want to show you something, she said. She pressed her palm flat against his chest, over his heart, and purposely opened her gift. Let him feel what she felt. Let him see her memories of Bram, of their love, of his death. Let him understand that she too was able to love again without betraying her past. When she pulled back, Alaric's eyes were bright with tears not yet shed. Thank you, he said roughly, for trusting me with that. We're both survivors, Freya said, both carrying grief but choosing to keep living. That's something to honor, not hide from. It was Winter who brought news of the trouble brewing. Alaric had sent a formal protest to the Northern Kingdom, claiming that Freya was pack property of Shadowfen and couldn't be taken without his permission. He'd also spread rumors to neighboring packs that she was cursed, that she brought death to those around her, that Alaric was making a terrible mistake. He's trying to force you to send her back, Winter reported, her face serious. He's claiming that keeping her breaks territorial agreements. And he's got 3 smaller packs backing him up, all of them worried about setting a pattern for mates being stolen across borders. She's not property, Alaric said, his voice dangerous. And she's my mate. The moon goddess herself chose us for each other. Rorik has no claim on her. He's claiming she's a danger, that her first mate died under strange circumstances, that keeping her puts your whole pack at risk. Winter paused. He's calling for a formal hearing before the Council of Alphas to prove she's not cursed. Freya felt ice flood through her veins. A formal hearing meant standing before a council of the most powerful alphas in the region and defending herself against accusations of bringing death. It meant reliving Bram's death in front of strangers. It meant possibly being sent back to Shadowfen if they ruled against her. I'll go, she said quietly. I'll prove I'm not cursed. You don't have to do this, Alaric started, but Freya shook her head. Yes, I do, not just for us, but for Torin. I won't have him grow up with this shadow over him. Let me use my gift. Let me show them the truth. The Council of Alphas met in neutral territory, a great stone hall built specifically for such gatherings. 11 Alphas attended, including Rorik, all of them seated in a semicircle facing a central floor where the accused would stand. Freya stood there now with Alaric at her side, and Torin being watched by Winter in an adjoining room. She wore simple clothes, a dress of pale blue that brought out her eyes, and her long blonde white hair was braided down her back. She looked calm, but her hands shook slightly. Alpha Rorik presented his case first. He spoke of the strange circumstances of Bram's death, of the pack's growing unease with Freya's presence, of the bad luck that seemed to follow her. He made it sound reasonable, concerned, like he was trying to protect both his pack and the Alpha King from a dangerous woman. Then it was Freya's turn. "My gift is called Memory Keeper," she began, her voice steady. "The moon goddess gave it to me when I found my second chance mate. It allows me to see and share memories through touch. I'd like to show you what really happened the day my first mate died, if you'll let me." The head of the council, an elderly alpha named Theron, nodded. "Go ahead." Freya walked to the nearest council member and held out her hand. "May I?" The alpha hesitated, then took her hand. Freya opened her gift and showed him the memory of that day 5 years ago, Bram laughing as they walked through the forest, Torin sleeping peacefully in his sling, the sudden snarls as rogues attacked without warning, Bram shouting at her to run, her terror as she ran away with their baby, the sounds of fighting behind her, finding Bram's body later, surrounded by 3 dead rogues, his last act, one of pure love and protection. The alpha gasped and let go of her hand. She speaks truth. The memory is clear. Her mate died a hero protecting his family from unprovoked attack. "Let me see," another alpha demanded, then another. Freya went to each council member in turn, showing them her memory, letting them feel the truth of what had happened. By the time she'd reached the last one, several alphas were looking at Rorik with disgust. "You called this woman cursed," Theron said, his voice hard. "But what I see is a widow who watched her mate die defending her and their baby son. A mother who survived grief and cruelty with grace. A woman blessed by the moon goddess with both a second chance mate and a sacred gift. Where exactly is the curse, Alpha Rorik?" Rorik's face had gone red. The pack was wrong," Theron interrupted. "And you as their alpha should have protected this woman instead of letting them blame her for their own fears." Theron stood and the other alphas followed. "This council finds no evidence of curse or wrongdoing. Freya is free to mate with Alpha King Alaric without interference. And Alpha Rorik, you will give a formal apology to her witnessed by this council for 5 years of unjust treatment." The apology when it came was grudging and insincere, but Freya didn't care. She'd been proven right. The shadow that had followed her for 5 years was finally lifted. She was free. Alaric pulled her into his arms the moment they left the council hall, holding her tight. "You were magnificent, so brave, so strong." "I just told the truth," Freya said, but she was shaking with relief. "Is it really over? Can we really move forward now?" "It's really over." Alaric pulled back enough to cup her face in his hands. "Freya, I know we've only known each other a month, but I've seen enough to know you're everything I could want in a mate. You're strong and kind and fiercely protective of those you love. You've lived through things that would break most people, and came out the other side with your heart still whole. Will you do me the honor of becoming my mate, my Luna? Will you let me be a father to Torin and build a future with you?" Freya felt tears streaming down her face, but for once they were tears of joy. Yes. Yes to all of it. The mating ceremony was held under the full moon with the entire Frostholm pack in attendance. Freya wore white and silver with winter flowers woven through her unbound hair. Torin stood beside her as her witness, proud and beaming in his formal clothes. Alaric's 25 top guards formed an honor circle around the ceremony site, all in wolf form, all with white and silver coats that gleamed in the moonlight. It was a sight that took Freya's breath away, powerful and beautiful, and a visual reminder that she was protected now, valued, wanted, when Alaric marked her neck, claiming her as his mate before the moon goddess and all witnesses. The bond that snapped into place was different from what she'd had with Bram. Not less, just different. Where Bram's bond had been warm sunlight and youthful joy, Alaric's was winter starlight and mature understanding, both precious, both sacred, both gifts from the moon goddess to a woman who'd learned that hearts could break and heal and love again. The pack howled their approval, a sound of celebration that echoed through the valley. Torin, standing beside Winter, cupped his hands around his mouth and howled too, his child's voice mixing with the adults, and laughter rippled through the gathering. "You're officially a prince now," Winter told him, grinning. "How does it feel?" "Weird," Torin said honestly, "but good weird. Mama's happy. That makes me happy." In the 5 years that followed, Freya built a life beyond anything she'd dared to dream. She was Luna of the Northern Kingdom, respected and valued by a pack that saw her strength rather than a curse. Her memory keeper gift became invaluable for solving disputes, finding truth in conflicting stories, and preserving important moments for future generations. She and Alaric had 3 more children. twin girls named Lara and Lissa when Torin was 7, and a son named Bram in honor of Freya's first mate when Torin was 9. Alaric had suggested the name himself, understanding that honoring the past didn't threaten the present. Torin flourished. At 10 years old, he was confident and kind, training with the elite guards and showing promise as a future leader. He called Alaric father without hesitation, but he also treasured the portrait of Bram that hung in his room and listened eagerly to Freya's stories of the man who died protecting him. One autumn evening, Freya stood on the balcony of the Great Hall, watching the sun set over Frostholm. The twins were playing in the courtyard below, under Winter's watchful eye, their laughter carrying on the breeze. Baby Bram was asleep in the nursery. Torin was at training, and Alaric was due back from a territorial meeting any moment. She felt his approach before she heard him. The mate bond still thrilled her even after 5 years. Strong arms wrapped around her from behind, and Alaric's chin came to rest on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" he asked softly. "About how different my life is now from what it was 6 years ago. About how I thought I'd never be happy again. About how wrong I was. The moon goddess knew what she was doing when she gave us second chances," Alaric said, "even when we couldn't see it ourselves." Freya turned in his arms, looking up at the man who'd saved her, not with violence or dramatic actions, but with patience and kindness and unwavering belief in her worth. "I love you. Not the same way I loved Bram, but just as deeply. You understand that, right? I love you too. Not the same way I loved Leora, but just as completely." Alaric kissed her forehead. "We're proof that hearts are bigger than we think. That there's room for both honoring the past and embracing the future. That second chances aren't betrayals, they're blessings." Years later, when young wolves would come to Luna Freya, struggling with loss or feeling like they'd never find happiness again, she'd share her story about being widowed young, about being blamed and pushed away, about believing she was cursed, about finding love again when she'd stopped looking for it. "The moon goddess doesn't always give us what we want when we want it," she'd tell them, her hand resting over her heart where both mate marks lay. Bram's faded but still visible, Alaric's bold and bright. "Sometimes she gives us what we need when we're finally ready to receive it, and sometimes the greatest blessings come after the deepest pain. I was a widow who thought her story was over, who believed she'd spend the rest of her life alone, defined by loss and tragedy. But I was wrong. My story wasn't over. It was just beginning a new chapter, one I never could have written without first surviving the previous chapters." She'd look at the young wolf with absolute certainty and say, "Your story isn't over either. This pain, this loss, this grief, it's not the end. It's part of your journey. And somewhere ahead, whether it's tomorrow or years from now, there's a chapter you can't even imagine yet. A chapter full of joy and purpose and love. You just have to survive long enough to reach it." And without fail, the young wolves would leave feeling lighter, because Luna Freya, the cursed widow who became a beloved queen, had shown them that second chances were real, that hearts could heal, that the moon goddess didn't give up on her children, even when they'd given up on themselves. Freya herself never gave up that belief. Even decades later, with her children grown and grandchildren playing in the courtyard, she'd still tell the story, still remind people that love wasn't something that ran out, that grief and joy could exist together, that being broken once didn't mean you couldn't be whole again, because she was living proof. The widow who'd been called cursed, who'd found a second chance mate in the most powerful alpha in the kingdom, who'd built a life full of love and laughter and purpose. Her story wasn't one of perfect happiness. There were still hard days, still moments when she missed Bram, or when Alaric spoke wistfully of Leora. But it was a story of strength, of hope, of choosing to keep living even when living felt impossible. And that, she'd learned, was the greatest gift the moon goddess could give. Not a life without pain, but the strength to survive it and the courage to love again on the other side. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe for more werewolf romance tales, alpha kings, rejected mates, and powerful Omega stories. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Leave a comment below, telling me what you thought of Freya and Alaric's story, and what kind of werewolf stories you'd like to see next. Consider becoming a member for exclusive content and early access to new stories. Your support means everything, and helps me create more content like this. Thank you for reading, and I'll see you in the next story.